All right, we got another classic between the Chiefs and the Bills go final here. And let's pray for Tyler Bass tonight because I think he's going to need a police escort in the city of Buffalo for a while here. Welcome to the opening line report. We have Conference Championship Sunday set in stone. It's Chiefs at Baltimore. It is Lions at Niners. Two awesome matchups, in my opinion. Very excited for both of them. Let's bring in our guy, Monotone Football, to help us break it all down. Dude, what a weekend. Such a better weekend for football than we had on Wild Card Weekend. What are your initial thoughts? Just go anywhere you want to go here as we start taking a look at these games for next Sunday. And as the lines are set for Chiefs at Ravens, we'll have those for you. But, Stu, just initial thoughts on how you saw everything unfold over the last couple days.
Yeah, no, I think the only way to describe this game was instant classic, right? I mean, we just saw two of the best quarterbacks in the league. Everyone's kind of talking about it, right? These are the best of the best. And we just saw the NFL at its highest level. It makes up for those blowouts, right? It makes up for those like Panthers, weird Falcons, week 13 Thursday night football games, right? This is what we wait for all season long. And we kind of saw it from both sides, right? Mahomes doing everything they needed to do. But at the end of the day, it comes down to a kicker, right? I think everyone in the world wanted overtime in that game. But unfortunately, Bass was not particularly close on that field goal, despite being very good all season long. And now the Bills season is over because of it, right? Josh Allen did everything he could. Pretty much everyone in the world except Stephon Diggs had a fantastic night on that Bills side. And it just comes down to a special teams error at the end of the day. That's the NFL for you.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. I wanted overtime there. I wanted to keep watching this game. Although I had a vested interest in the Chiefs winning, I wanted that game to keep going just as a fan. We're going to bring in our guy, AC Analytics Capper. Wow, what a Sunday we just had here, AC. Again, your initial thoughts here as we have Championship Sunday set in stone here. Anywhere you want to go.
Yeah, what a game. What a great weekend. Stu, I'm sure you killed it with your bets as well. It was a nice bounce back from card weekend where I went 2-2. This weekend went 3-1. Tommy, trust in the Detroit Lions. They are a good team. But no, it was a great game. Both games were good today. I think both games were competitive. Buffalo and Kansas City was a little vanilla in that first half, to be honest. I felt like no one was trying to make mistakes on both offense and defense. But I think, obviously we saw the ending. It turned out to be pretty good. And I don't know. I think the line is 3 going into Baltimore. We'll talk about it more.
So we actually just got to 3.5 here. So it's plus 3.5. Chiefs heading to Baltimore. You can get the Ravens on the money line at minus 175 and Kansas City at plus 145 with a total of 45.5. I love this number for this game, not because I particularly know who's going to win, but it tells me that the smart people know that this is going to be a close one in Baltimore. And if Kansas City, like you said, AC, plays kind of a conservative game like they did today, you didn't see Mahomes trying to take the top off the defense at all. He was much more concerned with not turning the ball over than he was looking deep down the field. Now, it's not like they have a ton of deep threats, but KC knew they needed to play within themselves, and it worked. Outside of kneeling and that weird touchback, they scored on almost every possession to start that game. It was like 9 straight possessions where it was a field goal or a touchdown until we got a few punts there at the end. So Kansas City clearly found some sort of rhythm here against Buffalo. Now, the Ravens defense is much more talented, in my opinion, than Buffalo's, and it's a little healthier as well. So we'll see if that could work in Baltimore. But, man, Kansas City, 3.5-point dogs, second week in a row as a dog here. Why don't we talk about it with you here first, Stu? What's your initial read on this line?
Yeah, the immediate thing that jumps out to me is if you notice anything about that game, it's that Buffalo had a lot of success running the ball, no matter who it was, whether it was Josh Allen, James Cook, or even Ty Johnson out of the backfield. And that's because Kansas City was deploying a ton of two deep safety looks. They were keeping their safeties back. They said, we want to limit explosive plays. You're going to have to beat us over the middle. And because of that, they had a lot of light boxes, and that was leading to a lot of success. And the general philosophy behind that for Kansas City is we want to slow you down. We want to make you run the ball. We want to make you grind it out. And hey, we have Patrick Mahomes on the other side, so that's perfect for us. And it's a great strategy. The thing I'll say, though, Baltimore wants to do that. They want to run the ball right down the field. They love those light boxes that they were seeing on film this week. I know James Cook is a good runner, but when you just look at the Ravens stylistically, you don't want to treat them like the Bills' run game. They're really going to take advantage of it. We obviously saw what Josh Allen can do. We know Lamar Jackson can definitely replicate that. He was just like the leading rusher in that game the other day. So expecting a lot of Lamar Jackson, Gus Edwards, Justice Hill. They mix it up a lot, but that's the number one thing I noticed. I think it's going to be a heavy ground game for the Ravens. I think they're going to take advantage of those light boxes. And hey, they take advantage of the play action game better than anyone else. So just when you're sleeping, just when you finally think another 1st and 10 runs coming, that's when Lamar Jackson's randomly going 45 yards down the field. And guess what? It's not to Zay Flowers. It's to Nelson Aguilar, right? It's to one of these Devin Duvernay. So it's always unpredictable. I love the Ravens offense. I definitely do think they can score some points in this one.
And we have movement on the line here, AC. You had said we are looking at 3, so maybe you saw it before my browser updated here. Chiefs now 3-point dogs heading to Baltimore. The money line shifting as well a little bit here. AC, what's your initial read on this number? Are we going to stick around this field goal favorite here for Baltimore, or are we going to see that keep coming down here as the public reacts to KC beating their rival here yet again in the playoffs?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to go much lower than 3. I think it's going to toggle back and forth between 3 and 3.5. That's my assumption for this week. Baltimore is a really, really good team, guys. They are the number 1 seed for a reason. Kansas City will have to win in Buffalo and then go on the road and cover and potentially win in Baltimore as well. So that's a really tall order. This is the 6th AFC championship game for Mahomes. So if anybody can do it, it's him. But I love what Stu mentioned in terms of the style of play here. Baltimore loves that grinded out. They want to lean on that offensive line. And even if they throw the ball, they're going to do these really quick outs that basically are extensions of the run game anyway. So they want to play that style. That's what that stadium is all about in the elements, grind it out. I'm probably going to buy Baltimore at -3. And then depending on how it goes throughout the week. But I like Baltimore as my first initial reaction.
Yeah, look, I mean, how can you not like Baltimore after what you saw on Saturday and really what we've seen from them all season? When they've played good teams, they've kind of smacked them. Like, they're not really afraid of anybody at this point. They're doing what they do. And like you mentioned, Stu, Lamar, it doesn't matter who he's throwing the ball to. And when a play breaks down, yeah, go find Duvernay 40 yards down the field. It's been interesting to see OBJ kind of come in and out of being important in that offense as well. So maybe he steps up in a big game. And what about Mark Andrews? I mean, he could be coming back here. It sounded like he was practicing and ramping up a little bit this week. I think they were targeting the AFC Championship game as his comeback game here. So, look, Mahomes just did what he did, and the Chiefs did what they did on the road in Buffalo. But to do it 2 straight weeks, like AC said, Mahomes has never had to do that in the postseason. So it'll be very interesting to see what he can do in a tough environment here. And I'm sure the weather will be wonky. Baltimore is always a weird weather city. So that's another thing to just consider here. I'm really excited for this game. This is an awesome AFC championship. And the AFC in general, right now, we are so spoiled with quarterbacks. With Allen and Jackson and Mahomes and Burrow when he's healthy. The list goes on and on for these talented teams with great quarterbacks. We're in a good spot here in the American Football Conference. Let's talk about the NFC here. We'll circle back on the AFC here before we finish up. But NFC, Lions, 6.5-point dogs at the moment, heading into San Francisco. You can get the Niners on the money line at minus 310, Detroit at plus 250, and a total of 51. Not a lot of respect for Detroit here as we sit here a week out from the game. I'm curious to see how this line moves throughout the week. Maybe it just sticks around this 6.5 number because of what we saw totality wise of the Niners all season long. But look, the Packers gave them issues yesterday. So I'm curious what you guys think looking at this number, almost a full 7-point favorite here at home against the Lions here. Stu, why don't we go first with you? 6.5-point dogs, Lions. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, this is definitely an interesting one. I think one of the biggest pieces of news we're going to have to follow this week is Deebo Samuel, right? I mean, that's a guy, their yards per play with and without him on the season is absolutely insane. And while they do have a bunch of stacked weapons outside of him, we saw just the impact it made when he went down last game. I mean, it kind of looked like they deflated a tire a little bit. Like they were mostly there, but you could tell something very important was missing, especially when Juwan Jennings got his first rush attempt of the season. It was like they didn't know what to do with all those plays they had in the playbook right there. So I think a healthy Deebo Samuel is a big deal. I've been talking about for the last couple of weeks. That matchup against that Detroit secondary would be something I would absolutely love to target, especially with his personal beef with CJ Gardner-Johnson. They got a little Twitter trash talk going. You love a little extra motivation. So if Deebo Samuel's back, that's a guy I'm going to be targeting. But I think his health is very important for this San Francisco offense, because are you really going to trust them to cover big numbers without a guy like him? I know CMC is doing a lot for you, but Detroit also ended the regular season with the #1 overall rush DVOA defense. So they're pretty prepared to attack the run. It's obviously CMC. He's going to be able to do what he does against anybody. But I think it's one of those situations where some of these other pieces are going to be that much more important. So for now, at this early number, I'm not interested in taking San Francisco. I would lean Detroit. Obviously, 7 was just available a minute ago, and then I lean the under. But before we get into the total, I want to hear what ACS to say about the spread.
Yeah, initially I like Detroit +7, +6.5. I like them even more. Jared Goff is from this area, so he knows how to play in these elements, whether it's gusty or wet. I think he's going to be fine. But I think this Detroit offense is clicking and peaking at the right time, if you will. Not by just scoring and producing yards, but playing playoff type football. I think there's a big difference between the postseason and the regular season, especially the type of plays you call. And then you saw Campbell, he's going to continue to be aggressive. And I think you have to be, as an underdog, especially a road underdog in the playoffs. So I like Detroit +7. That's my initial read, or +6.5. It is going to depend on how swirly or how gusty the winds are going to be, because that might limit the offense for Detroit. Because with San Francisco, I don't think it really matters, because that team is similar to what we were talking about in the AFC game. They're built kind of like Baltimore. They like to grind it out. It's because they have these large numbers, is because they have amazing weapons, right? You mentioned Deebo Samuel, but CMC is the best running back, in my opinion. You just have George Kittle, one of the best tight ends. Like, these guys get more of a crooked result, but I think at their base, at their fundamentals, is Kyle Shanahan running the ball, zone blocking scheme, and I think that plays in every element. So that's something you have to think about. But I just like Detroit being live in this one.
It was great to see Kittle have a great game yesterday, and he's kind of had a little mini rebirth this season. It's one of those things. The tight end position's a tough thing to look at as a casual fan, right? Because they do so many little things. But catching stats and like casual fan stats, Kittle had a nice second half of the season here. So that was fun to see. What am I supposed to think of Brock Purdy at this point heading into the game on Sunday here? Obviously, he did what he did to win the Niners that game down the stretch yesterday, but at times it looked bad against Green Bay, and it's looked shaky here and there over the last few weeks to end the season. So now you've got a Detroit team that loves to get after the quarterback. They're going to put pressure on Brock Purdy, and hopefully, if you're a Niners fan, he's not getting that happy feet and he's able to stay within himself and really just focus on that West Coast offense here. So, guys, what do you think about Brock Purdy heading into Championship Sunday? Is that something that Niners fans should have a concern over the play of this young quarterback here, and we can hit on the total here as well. Can get into how these offenses are going to play. So AC, why don't you kick us off with the Brock Purdy angle of this game?
Yeah, I guess I'll caveat by saying I think Brock Purdy is more than a system quarterback. I know he has an amazing team around him, amazing coaching staff that prepares the game in the right way. But I think he has a lot of talent himself. With that being said, if you were to ask me a game on the line, and I know it's hard to even imagine, would you take Purdy or Jared Goff? I'm actually leaning Goff in that situation because, I mean, I know he's already made it to the Super Bowl. He's already won big games. So I like Goff. I think he can play in any weather, like I said, and his size makes him a lot more, I guess, dependable when it comes to injuries and things like that. But with that said, like I mentioned, I still think Purdy is good. I just don't think, like without the weapon, I don't think he would be as good or as productive as he is today. That's why I would pick Detroit because I'm leaning the quarterback situation to Goff.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything against Purdy. Obviously, at times I was hoping he might win MVP. While I never was rooting for that to happen, it was kind of almost an emotional hedge at a certain point. Like, he's a guy that he can command this offense, and that's all you need him to do, right? Against a better opponent, I may be a little bit worried, but this Detroit defense, while they do get pressure on the quarterback, if you can get the ball out fast, if you can let your playmakers make plays, then you can still have success right here, and that's what Brock Purdy does best. It's really not about him. It's about making everybody else around him look better. I guess the biggest concern is we just kind of saw he got a little bit shaken without Debo last week, right? It's kind of, can he get calm, cool, and collected again for next week? I think so. I think the media will probably give him a pretty hard time, but I'm glad you asked this question right here because I think it really does pertain to the total of when we talk about a 51 total in a game, right? We're talking about a Mahomes. We're talking about a Josh Allen. And we just saw those two quarterbacks play each other, and the total was 45.5, right? You have to have some elite quarterback play or some god-awful defense for us to get to that level. And in a matchup between Brock Purdy and Jared Goff, I like the under right here. I mean, I have a hard time seeing it get to 51. San Francisco, strong defense. Detroit has problems in the secondary. But like I said, number one overall rush DVOA defense, that's going to matter against the San Francisco team. So I just have a hard time seeing this one getting over the 52 total with the kind of quality quarterback play in this one.
Yeah, and look, Detroit is a different team playing outdoors. It's a fact. And they're going to go into San Francisco. There's weird weather, as we talked about. And then you have Brock Purdy, who, as you mentioned, Stu, is not Patrick Mahomes, is not a Lamar Jackson, is not a Josh Allen. So 51 does feel rich for me heading into this one. But look, if the Lions can sack up and actually be the team that they are meant to be in big games, as they haven't been at a few different points in this season and screwed me, then maybe we're talking about something different here. Now, I would like to state for the record, I had the Lions today. I had a nice little parlay that my local sportsbook had put together that had everyone that won this weekend. So all the favorites plus the Chiefs, and it was an odds boost at plus 400. So yay me, go Lions.
Nice.
It was a nice payday.
Nice hit. I do have one final point, Tommy. Is if the game is close going in the fourth quarter in San Francisco, all the pressure is going to be on Purdy, Shanahan, the fans, all of it. You're going to feel the tenseness and the pressure in that building. So I think Detroit here is like, they're not only happy to be here, but they truly believe in winning. That starts with Dan Campbell. So again, man, the more I talk about it, I'm leaning really strongly to the Ravens, and I'm leaning really strongly to the Lions.
Yeah, look, I mean, that would be a very fun Super Bowl. I think any of these matchups would be a great Super Bowl, personally. I would have a ton of fun watching either of these games. If you guys are just joining us, we have Championship Sunday locked in. The Chiefs are 3-point dogs heading to Baltimore. You can get Baltimore in the money line at minus 166, KC at plus 140, and a total of 45.5. And on the NFC side, you have the Lions, 6.5-point dogs heading to San Francisco. San Fran in the money line at minus 310. Detroit at plus 250, and a total of 51. So let's open up the floor here. We got a question from Josh. from X. Are you guys buying into the Super Bowl logo conspiracy? Purple and red color scheme, Ravens versus San Fran. I've seen this on the internet. I've seen this talked about. I do not believe in the conspiracy theory, but I do believe, even though this was not a good game earlier this season, this would be the best matchup. This is what I want to happen for all of us as football fans. I want to see Lamar Jackson finally get to the big game. I want to see this Niners team that's loaded with all pros get to the Super Bowl. This is the matchup we should all be rooting for personally. Like I mentioned, I think any of these combination of these four teams would be fun. We saw Chiefs-Lions week 1 as an incredibly fun game, right? Niners-Chiefs Super Bowl rematch would be fun. So there's all sorts of elements here that would be fun. Baltimore-Detroit, not as good a game earlier this year. But I think any matchup's fun. This would be the best one. Guys, if the Ravens and Niners were to play in the Super Bowl, at this moment, who are you picking? Stu, you go first.
I would pick the Ravens to get it done once again. I mean, obviously we saw what happened when those two teams did it again. I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that I trust the Ravens to go into any ballpark in the country, whether it's home, away, whatever, cold, dome, bad circumstance, good circumstance, and they're going to run the ball and they're going to run play action. And then Lamar Jackson's going to run the ball. And then when you think Lamar Jackson's going to run the ball, Justice Hill is randomly going to run the ball for 22 yards. Justice Hill, and then you're going to look down, and like we said earlier, Devin Duvernay is going to be 45 yards down the field. It's a very hard team to defend. And then when you look at what McDonald has done on the other side, some of the most creative blitz packages I've seen, the way they're using Kyle Hamilton all over, Geno Stone, a very underrated safety as well. I'm just a big fan of what the Ravens are doing on both sides of the ball. I haven't seen enough consistency. The question with the Ravens has always been, what happens when you put Lamar down 7, down 10? How does he respond? To me, I've really seen it. He's kind of proven himself this year that he kind of is that guy. I think he's answered a lot of those questions we've had. Brock Purdy, when you put him down, when you put him, 7, 14, I don't know if I'm as comfortable. So at the end of the day, that's what I'm going to go with. I'm going to trust the Ravens to keep on going.
I fully agree. If it's Baltimore, San Francisco, you have to go with the better quarterback. Not only the better quarterback, the two-time MVP, and he's one of the best players in the league. I don't think the two quarterbacks are even in the same league. Not to offend any Purdy fans out there, but we're talking about 2 number 1 seeds, right? San Francisco and Baltimore. It's just not going to be like that easy, guys. Like, I know it seems like, okay, San Fran is the best team in the NFC. Baltimore's the best team in the AFC. Like, they're going to clash. It just never really works out that way. But I do see one of these teams getting upset next week. And in my opinion, I think Baltimore is going to take care of business. We'll see how Brock Purdy in that fourth quarter, if he can, either come back from a score or extend the lead. We'll see. Because I think Detroit is just going to go, balls to the wall, 100 miles per hour. Nothing's going to stop that offense, in my opinion.
Yeah, Green Bay definitely exposed San Francisco a little bit, right? And I think they exposed them defensively. And again, if the Lions show up and wear their big boy pants, there is a path to beating this Niners team at home. I don't personally believe that's going to happen. Clearly, the books do not believe that the Lions are going to come in here and be, competitive, right? They're almost a touchdown underdog here heading into San Francisco, but there is a path. And I want to just shout out Green Bay. I think they are going to be a sexy NFC pick heading into next season. As young as they are, to have the run they had to finish out their season, kudos to Green Bay and Matt LaFleur and everything they did to close out the year. They are legit. Jordan Love is legit. We're not going to spend too much time here on anything other than the games heading into next week, but I did want to shout out the Packers for a second here. All right, let's talk quickly before we let AC go here about this KC-Baltimore game one more time. Which quarterback do you think has the bigger day on Sunday? I know you said Lamar is the team that you're going to go with, the Ravens, but as you go ahead and look at Sunday here, should we expect Mahomes to absolutely ball out and lose in a shootout here? Or are we going to see Lamar and the Ravens totally dominate this Chiefs team who has had holes all season long? Stu, why don't you go first? What do you expect QB v QB heading into this AFC Championship game.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think if everything goes Baltimore's way, then it's absolutely not going to be a shootout. And I think this 45.5 total kind of indicates that. And it's what we were going back to earlier, the fact that Kansas City invited Buffalo to run the ball today. We saw it all game long. They said, you know what, James Cook, if you want to have 6 yards, we're going to give it to you. Because at the end of the day, we'd rather that than a Josh Allen 45-yard bomb down the field. And the Ravens are a team that are going to take that over and over and over again. And that's just going to lead to a slower game overall. The other game script we could get into, it could be the complete opposite, which would be the Chiefs get the ball first. They put their foot on the gas, 7-0, and suddenly Lamar is immediately dropping back and we're going full throttle. So for me, that's always something you can take advantage of from a live betting perspective. But I don't know if that's like the most, likely outcome here. I think that would be the most fun outcome. But for me, I'm expecting a little bit of a slower game script. So I'm not looking for Mahomes to have an amazing game. I mean, I think he's awesome. Mahomes is an underdog is fantastic. That's never something I want to be on the other side of. But this Baltimore defense is really, really good. And what's the number one thing we heard on the broadcast today? Don't blitz Mahomes. Well, guess what? The Ravens don't have to blitz. They get pressure with 4 more than almost anyone else. They don't need to bring that extra blitzer, right? They have plenty of pressure themselves. So for me, I think that'll be a really interesting factor to monitor. I think they limit Mahomes a little bit, and I think Lamar has the better night.
And money's coming in on the under here, people. You mentioned it, 45.5. It's now down to 45. So people are betting the way you're thinking here, Stu, when it comes to that total. AC, who you got, Mahomes v. Lamar here for who has the better looking stat line coming out of Sunday?
Yeah, it's actually a pretty complex question because if we're just looking at yards and touchdowns, I mean, Mahomes is going to have the better numbers there, especially with all the pass attempts you would assume he's going to have in comparison to Lamar. Because look, Baltimore is, like Stu mentioned, is going to really depend on the game script. They want to lean into the running game. They want to shorten the game. Lamar could have 15 passes and get the win, right? We've seen that before. And he might not even get any touchdowns, right? It could just be Gus Edwards at the goal line for 2 or 3 scores. So, I mean, to me, I think Patrick Mahomes will have the better stats. But I think Lamar and his team will have the bigger impact because I think they are going to be able to control this game and the tempo of this game. And I'll say this, like, Patrick Mahomes is incredible. I think he's been an underdog, 10 or 11 times, and he's covered that underdog spread 9 out of 10 times. Like 9, 1-1, I think is the official number. I mean, the guy is absurd, and he has no wide receivers. I guess he found a fountain of youth for Travis Kelce. He looked a lot more spry today. Isaiah Pacheco, going to be, in my opinion, the X factor in this game. If the Ravens can limit him and tackle him, it's all about gang tackling with him because he runs so hard. But if they can limit him for 3 or 4 yards a carry instead of 5 or 6, right? That's really going to be the difference in the game, in my opinion. And if they do that and they make Kansas City one-dimensional, I think Baltimore is going to really pull away towards the end.
I hope it stays close. I want to have an awesome championship Sunday here. I want to be on here with both you guys talking about awesome games next Sunday night here. I'm so pumped for these matchups. And again, if you guys are just joining us, Detroit, 6.5-point dogs. Kansas City, 3-point dogs. Mahomes is a dog, man. It just feels like too tempting for me to not hop on. Even if I'm picking Baltimore, I just love that number for Case. I mean, just Mahomes is an underdog. It should just be like a blind bet at this point, right? What, just 9-0-1 or whatever the heck the number is. I mean, it feels great. So, AC, we're going to let you jump here, and hopefully we're talking about good football here after Championship Sunday, next Sunday night.
Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
All right, we'll see you next Sunday. And let's head into my favorite segment of the week, Monotone Football's early prop leans. Our resident prop expert going to help you get the early edge here when those lines drop later in the week. We got 2 games to work with, so the books are going to be extra sharp in theory heading into the AFC and NFC championship games here. And our Stu is going to help you guys out. So Monotone Football, the floor is yours.
Yeah, no, it is. You're right. I'm glad you mentioned that. The sports books are always extra sharp this time of year. It's important, if you were Ben, 10, 15 props a week earlier in the year, like I was, probably makes sense to limit your volume a little bit more now that there's only a couple games and the sports books are on top of it. I'm very happy to escape with a positive week this one. It started the same way, slow game ones and then killer game two. So looking to keep that momentum going. Last week we were on Josh Allen rush yards. We're going to Lamar Jackson rush yards for the same reason in this matchup right here, whether they have the Willie Gay spy or not. He obviously was started out that game doing that, and then he got a little injured, so we don't know if he's going to be fully healthy. But what I saw was good either way, and it was what I was talking about earlier: light boxes, deep safeties. They're begging the other team to run on you, and stylistically, that's what we want to take advantage of. And obviously, we know this Baltimore rush offense is awesome. The biggest trouble is, who are we picking, right? Justice Hill is involved, right? Obviously, Gus Edwards is going to be the short yardage back. Now we're bringing in freaking Dalvin Cook from nowhere is suddenly getting carries. So for me, I think the safest thing to do is just go with the most consistent runner all year long, and that's Lamar Jackson, the guy who's consistently got the job done for us. We just saw a mobile quarterback do the same exact thing to him this week. I think that's an awesome example. He gave them a little bit of roadmap on how to attack this defense. Definitely expecting Lamar Jackson to have another good game on the ground. When we look at the other side, I think a really interesting prop that kind of correlates with that is going to be Nick Bolton, tackles and assists. He's the linebacker for the Chiefs. He's been extremely impactful this year. And he's one of those guys that when he's on the field, it's very felt. And when he's off the field, obviously you notice. And the Kansas City team finally got him back healthy. He was very impactful this game. And Nick Bolton is a good coverage linebacker. He's involved in stopping the run. So not only will he have some responsibility for quarterback rushing where he'll be involved in tackle, he'll also be in coverage and having assist opportunities for Mark Andrews, who you mentioned earlier. And I'm glad you did. Isaiah Likely is fun. He's awesome. The guy is, everyone's joking around. He's like 90% of Mark Andrews, which is dope. And it's awesome. Most teams don't have that as a backup. But the real deal should be back this week. And Mark Andrews is an absolute target hog. So we obviously want to beneficiate from that with Bolton on the other side, getting some tackles and assists. So if you don't normally play defensive props, I think it's a good opportunity here to look into it. On the other side, I cashed him this week. I know it sounds a little bit simple, but we're going right back to Christian McCaffrey rush yards. I got it at 90 this week. I assume it's going to be in the same kind of category. At the end of the day, I don't really care however highly ranked your opposing rush defense is. We know this team is going to go in there and run the ball. And while sure, they may have a little bit more trouble than a usual week, we've seen Christian McCaffrey is the most efficient running back in the league. He's the best running back in football. And if you're going to give this guy 18, 20 carries a game, good things are going to happen. And we just saw that. They kept going out, drive after drive, Purdy firing, nothing. And then finally, we give the ball to CMC. Look what happens. We win the game. Obviously, it's not that simple. But when you really look at it, when Shanahan sits down and watches the film, he's going to keep thinking to himself, damn, why did we not start out this drive with the Christian McCaffrey run right here? And I think they're going to come out extremely aggressively. We know Shanahan's the best play designer in football. He's going to get creative. It's not just going to be up the middle. We're going to see some tosses, some sweeps, a ton of creativity, especially if Deebo Samuel is injured, limited, or out. That is an absolute game breaker, and I think that means CMC is going to be looking at 22, 23, 24 carries.
And look, you have Purdy and you have Christian McCaffrey, right? So you have a guy who is Mr. Irrelevant, who is probably having his game elevated by being surrounded by like 9 Pro Bowlers, right? You have Christian McCaffrey, who's like a cheat code at this point. Take the ball out of Purdy's hands, give it to McCaffrey, and just let the man cook. He is an absolute beast. I love watching that guy play football. It was unfair when the Panthers traded Christian McCaffrey to San Francisco. David Stern should have rose from the dead, changed over to the NFL, and blocked that trade from happening because he's an absolute menace to society for San Francisco. So great call by you. We do have some line movement in the AFC. 3.5. We are back to 3.5 for the Chiefs here. So this thing probably going to stay in the 3.5 to 2.5 range here over the next 48 before we settle in right at 3. I think it's going to stay at 3. That feels like the perfect number here. Money line has shifted a little bit as well. Baltimore at minus 175, KC at plus 145. The total still at 45 here. So if you like KC as an underdog, go ahead and grab them right now at plus 3.5, because again, I think it's going to come back down here. I would not take KC on the money line here, though, folks. I do think it's going to be Baltimore. I do think it's going to be San Francisco. I think we get a rematch, and hopefully we actually get an awesome game in Vegas for that matchup. It was supposed to be a much better game than it was. And if you guys remember, and you don't just look at the box score, it was a pretty good game until it wasn't. Sorry, I got so excited my AirPod fell out. It was a good game until it wasn't. It just got out of hand there. So if they can just maintain that good game throughout, we will all be very happy campers here. So that's going to do it for our conference championship preview show. Your first look at the betting lines for conference championship Sunday. Make sure you guys download OddsTrader. It is the best in class sports betting predictive AI. Go ahead and download it. It's free. It's going to help you become a better bettor. It is a great resource as you go ahead and bet football. OddsTrader.com, the App Store, the Google Play Store. We are free. Go ahead, do that. Rewatch this show 7 million times and use your own betting knowledge. Mix that all together in a pot, and you're going to be a better bettor for it. So for myself, for Stu, we will be back next Sunday night with AC to talk about the Super Bowl. Your first look at the Super Bowl here, right here on the NFL Opening Line Report. We'll be back on Sunday. Talk to you guys later.